course, we want to still look like a really good citizen. So if somebody asks you to take something on, and for whatever reason you don't think you have capacity, to actually say to them, maybe it's your manager, I'd really love to help with that. It sounds, really important. Really happy to invest or, devote some time to that. But here are the things that I have on my list at the moment. What would you like me to take off? And in many cases, that manager would say, oh.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and this is Well, Hello Anxiety. In a world that often moves too fast, we're here to pause, breathe, and understand anxiety together. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share honest conversations, and uncover the science behind anxiety and well-being, all while creating a space where it's okay to not be okay. Let's continue this journey together. Dr. Kat, thank you so much for hanging around for another recording for part 2 of this conversation. And if you are just joining us this week, if you've been recommended this podcast, a very, very warm welcome to you. We are just starting a part 2 with my wonderful guest, Dr. Catherine Page. She is based in Melbourne, just like me. She is an organisational psychologist. She has written a book I can't wait to read, which is called Good Work. And we finished up last week talking about some of the really practical ways that you can not only look after yourself to manage stress and also protect your mental health and well-being during the day, but also some of the ways that you can recover intentionally at home. And Dr. Kat, it's so interesting that you shared so many practical ideas. But I wear a Whoop strap, and you can see it here. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. And
they track your recovery, don't they?
They do.
From what I've seen.
They do. And there's so much data, but the 3 kind of main data points each day are sleep, recovery, and strain. And strain is like if I go to CrossFit and I do a really big workout, my strain might be 14, it might be 15, it might be 12. If I haven't done a CrossFit day, my strain might be 6 or 7 if I've had a bit of stress, because it can be psychological, it can be physical. The sleep is pretty straightforward, but the recovery, it was so interesting because I was telling a friend today, and it's so funny because I said I'm a bit ashamed to tell this to my friend, and here I'm about to say it on the podcast, but I did less than 1,000 steps yesterday. And I looked at that yesterday and I just thought, oh, Jodi, like my life has always been about sport, exercise, strength training, fitness, health, well-being. I do all of the things, and I'm a CrossFitter. But I have found that on the days when I'm not at the gym, I'm not as active. And what I did, Kat, is I started a running program and built up too fast and ended up with a stress fracture. I was in a moon boot for 8 weeks at the end of last year. So
so frustrating.
I
feel frustrated for you.
Oh my gosh, it was. And so yesterday was just a day where I call it bum glue. I was just like at my desk most of the day, in and out of the car a couple of times. But my recovery after sleep last night, my recovery was in the yellow zone. So it's kind of like in that, if we think of the traffic light, the green, red, yellow. And it's because I was so inactive. I pretty much just worked, cooked dinner, and then sat on my backside at the end of the evening. And it just shows, and not everybody has the chance to kind of think about their recovery and measure recovery in really tangible ways. But when I've had a walked the dog, got out into the sunshine, I've spent a bit of time with our chickens, I've been and caught up with a friend for a coffee, all of those things influence that recovery. So I really love what you shared about that. And I know that you had more to share with us, and I had to sort of say, we're gonna stop here and come back. So would you like to add anything to what we kind of talked about so far in terms of those tools? Any other favourite tools that you love to share? And then I want to talk about gendered lens, because I know things are different for men and women. So first of all, any more tools for us?
Oh, I have so many tools. Probably one thing that I hadn't mentioned that you just reminded me of as you were speaking then when you were talking about the running club. So I think connection and being part of community and our relationships is such a fundamental part of that recovery as well. So the reason I thought of the run club, I don't know whether that's a social thing or whether you would involve others in that. But ideally, if I would say doing activities with other people where you actually just get the opportunity to talk about your day, like really deeply spend time with people and actually see people is so important, because I do think as a society, and this is probably getting, not just to the anxiety work related, but also just more broadly, we are experiencing a bit of a mental health crisis. And some of that I think does come down to the sense of loneliness that people are feeling. Other people matter. They matter in so many ways. They matter in terms of helping to compensate for the stresses that we experience in life. Like the people we work with is often one of the most important things in a job, and having that sense of connection. But there's also heaps of evidence to suggest that social support helps to recover from illness. It absolutely helps us to cope with stress. I think it's absolutely an important part of a recovery strategy. And you can kind of stack some of these activities as well, like going for a walk out in nature, tick, tick, listening to a podcast, tick.
Yes.
Or going for a walk out in nature, walking your dog, tick, 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 talking to a friend. You're going to get that additive effect. Or going to do, a yoga class or CrossFit with friends and having a little chat and just feeling seen and actually connecting with people. That feeling is just such an important, deeply human thing that we all need to have more of. And I think oftentimes we're not getting as much of that for lots of different reasons. Communities are not so much a fixture of modern life. We tend to spend most of our time with our family. I know that is where I spend the bulk of my time. And
Yes.
that obviously that family unit is incredibly important. But what then tends to suffer at times is like time for exercise or time for connection. So I do think when we talk about the health benefits of work, we'd be remiss in not talking about work as a source of community and connection to compensate for some of that loneliness. And I think it is an critical component of good work.
It really is. And I think about the changes in people working from home and the digital ways we can connect, but it really can be so isolating, and loneliness has never been as much of a problem in our communities, and it's a worldwide phenomenon as it is now. And so what you've just said about work, and we're not going to like everyone we work with. We're not going to click. We're not going to gel. But, if you can find that one person or a handful of people where you can connect, have those conversations and start to learn a bit about one another and feel open at work to talk about some of the things that are outside of the workplace, like, how's your dog or your kids or your sport or whatever that is. I really love that you've reinforced this, because it's easy sometimes, isn't it, to, especially you're a mum of two, you've got a 6 and a 3-year-old and a full-time job and a husband and friends and family, of course. And it can be easy sometimes to deprioritize doing things like, if I could just get out for a 20-minute walk, you sort of feel like I've got more important things to do.
Yes.
Or if you're meeting with a friend, or doing that in person rather than just on the phone, which I'm a bit guilty of too. I'll spend my time in the car making phone calls and constantly connected with my friends, but not always catching up in person.
Yes.
And we can often think, can't we, that, there's not that, I'm a firm believer in that, family and friends are everything, and that without those, what is life? What is this life for us? Our work's important, and of course, but it can be very easy to lose sight of what really matters in the hustle and bustle. And I'd love your thoughts on that, and kind of how it varies between men and women in terms of trying to take really good care of ourselves and even the time available.
Yes. So I think, and this is probably advice for all of us. I think a lot of us have not really been taught about the ingredients that we need to have in our life and day to day to actually make us feel good and to make us feel happy. So if I think about happiness, my view on happiness is about living your life well, living a life that is good for you, living a fulfilling and meaningful life. And one of the things that we need, or there's certain ingredients that we need almost every day. This is how I think about my own life, to be happy. Or over the course of a week, just knowing what my non-negotiables are. Because I think this is probably particularly true for women, but I think for everyone, like just knowing that you need to be home from work to connect with your family, at least maybe it's 5 days a week, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 2, that you need to exercise at a minimum 2 times a week, and otherwise you go and unravel, that you need to have connection once a week. So I think if you're really clear on, firstly, some of the fundamental principles that make us happy, that sense of connection, mastery, physical exercise, if you're really clear on what your non-negotiables are, it's much easier to then be quite intentional about how you craft your day, and how, if not your day, then your week. Because I think trying to craft your day in line with these things, I think, is sometimes a bit of an impossible ask, particularly when you are a full-time working parent. So I like to think of it really more as over the course of a week. Yes. Like, what are some of the ingredients that need to be present for me to say it's been a really good week.
Yes.
And sometimes you'll have a day within the week, right, where you're like, that was just an awesome day. Like I had one day this week where I just like slept really beautifully. I got up and went to the gym, and I hardly ever do that these days, and just had a really good workout. And then I came back, I had plenty of time with the kids and had that connection, had a really good drop off, and then just had that sense of achievement at work that day as well. I had, demands were there, but just the right amount for me to feel engaged and in a zone, and I managed to tick things off. So it was just one of those days where I was like, this is a really good day. And just taking note of the days that are really good can teach you so much about those non-negotiables, and then contrasting that with a not so good day.
Yes. And taking that moment for reflection. It's wonderful that you're able to actually go, that was a great day. What was great about it? And then you obviously, that reinforces, okay, those things are good for me. And then you'll bring more of those in. And it's so interesting listening to you, and obviously with our conversation that went to air last week as well. Like when you were talking earlier about control and mastery, and if you haven't joined us for last week's episode, one of the things that Dr. Kat talked about was in her bio on her website, which I thought was really fun and relatable, was tidying her kitchen cupboards for stress management. And I personally here talking to you today, the situation that I'm in and that I'm recognizing and I'm really aware of now after our conversation is that I'm feeling like I've got not enough control in my work with lots of loose ends, those loose ends that I want to tie off. But conversely, I've been feeling so much better in myself. And I know that I've got time this evening because I have a husband and a son who'll be at cricket and a daughter who will be out for dinner this evening. So I know I've got hours tonight, and I can come back to a lot of those things and take care of them. But in my home life, there's some of the things that I've done, especially over the school holidays. Obviously here in Australia, we have a significant break with the school holidays over the summer, which is about 6 weeks. And I still worked for a lot of that, but I moved bookshelves. I coordinated and organised my books. I emptied drawers. I
did the same thing.
Oh my gosh, my daughter did the plastic straw, right? I don't know, Dr. Kat, does this happen in your house? I have the most ridiculous amount of single socks, and either containers with lids or lids with no containers.
Yes.
What is going on?
I've actually got a bag of socks, and every time my mum comes over, because she looks after my daughter once a week, she's like, I can never get to the bottom of this bag of socks because she likes to pair them. It drives me completely nuts. And Tupperware lids or containers that don't have a match.
I tell you what, it is just the mystery of the modern household.
And you'll never get to the bottom of it.
No, well,
and you cannot ever tick it off your list. It's not ever done.
You can't. But actually, you can. And I'll tell you how I did it. I threw away the socks. I'm just like, that is it. And if the friend rocks up, the friend's going in the bin as well.
How cleansing.
And the drawer, our daughter did this. Our son had to do a particular extra task outside. So I said to our daughter, okay, your job is the plastics cupboard. Could you please just pull the drawer out, match everything, and sit everything that doesn't have a friend on the counter? And it seemed disproportionate, the sense of satisfaction that I got. And now knowing I can picture the drawers as I'm talking about them and how organised they are. And just that sense of control, and even on a hot day getting washing done and getting it out in the sun and dry, and just that sense of mastery and control and ticking things off and feeling like I've got my ducks in a row to the extent that you can in a busy modern home. So when you talk about these as contributors to stress and anxiety and overwhelm, I think it's so good for us to have this conversation, because we can all go, right, where am I at? Do a bit of a stock take, and what do I need? And sometimes it literally could be 15 minutes doing one thing that can just make the most profound difference to how we feel for days and weeks.
Absolutely. Yes. And I would say that if you're the partner of someone who is all of a sudden has a deep desire to just clean the house or vacuum or reorganize the Tupperware cupboard, don't take that away from them. Yeah. Because that person is like, what that tells you is that individual is feeling out of control and they're trying to regulate. It's essentially what we're doing. We're trying to regulate our nervous system by getting control, because humans desire and need some level of control. And that is, it's one of the forms, classic forms of household.
Yes.
For households.
It's. Have you seen All Her Fault with Sarah?
No, but I have heard.
Oh,
but it's great.
It is excellent. It's on Binge. I actually just paid $10 to get Binge over the summer just to watch it because I'd heard such good things about it. And there's a scene, and this won't give anything away, but the gist of the show is that her son is missing. And so the family's under a lot of pressure. And she's doing, on this particular occasion, they're having a film crew come to the house to interview them about kind of trying to raise awareness about getting their son back. And she just wants to clean the couch.
Yeah.
And everyone just wants to tell her it's not important or they can do it for her. And I didn't realise in that moment that that's exactly what she was doing, and what a beautiful, nuanced storyline to include a scene like that. And just for us, I think, to know that these things do matter, that it's more than just doing a little tidy or it can have a profound impact on us in our ability to cope in the moment. And also when we know that a big job is done, it's such a good feeling, and it matters for our mental health.
It absolutely does. And I have read somewhere that actually women are more triggered by their external environment. So there is a gender difference. This will particularly speak to a subset of humans, which are probably anxious overachievers, who often are women and mothers, right? You know, I think there is a particular persona of people who are probably a little bit like me and maybe a little bit like you as well, Jodi, you know, that people who really earnest about wanting to do a good job and achieve, you know, if not for themselves, then for others, you know, like just be someone who's reliable, dependable, but also perhaps has some of that sort of anxiety attached to that as well, then all of the things that make you successful in your work environment are going to be the things that in some ways make it more challenging for you in your non-work time, because we tend to be people who put ourselves at the back of the queue. So there's a little bit of neglect, really, like self-neglect, and perhaps not honouring the fact that we have to restore our resources in order to help others, right? And if you are having disrupted recovery time because of all of the, you know, the women all people at the moment are doing a second shift, right? So I saw some Microsoft data recently, and they essentially will track how much time people are spending online, you know, when they're logging onto Teams, when they're coming off, or Zoom, or whatever it might be. And a lot of people are accessing emails or Teams before 6 a.m. So I think it was something like 40% of people are logging on before 6 a.m. to check their emails. I suspect people are just doing it like as soon as they get up. And then there's about 30% of people who are logging on after 10 p.m. But a lot of people, you know, will come home, and to cope with some of the workload, if it's unsustainable, they will come home and they will do a second shift later, right? Maybe after the kids are in bed.
Yes.
But then women, because women are also carrying kind of like often more of the administrative burden in the cognitive load in the home, or the social load, you know, the social emotional load, you could argue that they're experiencing a third shift, because often during the day, many women are carrying that load already within their work environment. You know, they're the people that we go to when you need someone to speak to. So they're kind of holding that load. Then you're holding the emotional load for your kids potentially, or your partner. And, you know, so it's just, there's these multiple shifts. And so what that is doing is disrupting recovery time.
Yes.
So that's why I think there is a gender overlay on this, and why you will probably hear more women saying that they feel burnt out. And I've absolutely experienced that feeling of that bone-numbing exhaustion.
Yes.
At times, which, by the way, if I might add, just to add to myself, Jodi, I think the word burnout is a really important term to discuss. We often equate it with exhaustion, and exhaustion is a really key component of burnout, but it's not the only component. So for someone to be burnt out, which is a really quite a debilitating experience, they're exhausted, which is already tough enough, but you would add to that typically this sense of detachment and cynicism that starts to build. You know, you might hear yourself saying things like, oh, what's the point? Or here we go again. Or like it's that they're just a little bit cynical in the work environment, where they just have almost switched off from it. That is a sign that someone is heading more towards burnout. And then the third piece that really rounds out a full sort of diagnosis, if you like, of burnout, or classification is probably more accurate, is a sense of professional inefficacy. Like, I'm just not good at my job anymore, or I just can't think the way I used to, or other people are sort of better than me at this. You know, you just start to doubt yourself, and that you lose your confidence, and that's really hard to regain. That is something I think women, that I think, and I don't have data on this specifically, but I think that's probably where you see women opting out of the workplace, or choosing a different career pathway that's more flexible, because they're trying to manage not just workload, but total load.
Yes.
Across their life.
Yes. I use an acronym if I'm talking about polyvagal theory when I'm presenting, and I talk about the red zone, which is where burnout can live. And I've just come up with this acronym RED, which is reduced efficacy, exhaustion and detachment. And
Yes.
then I can sort of build on that. And I think it's really good because I think burnout, like anxiety, like a lot of the words that we use when we're talking about mental health and well-being, can be a little bit misunderstood, that there's more to them. There's obviously much more below the surface. And I think it's good to kind of flag that, and thank you for doing so. And if I could tell you how many people I talk to and women I talk to who have said, if I could just get a job in a shop selling coffees or clothes or waiting tables or something that is just, like we said earlier, that really low demand, low stress, although, gosh, I mean, they can have their own challenges, but just something that compared to the work that they might be doing now feels like it's clock on, clock off, really low stakes, and just feels like it would make life more manageable. None of them want to, of course. None of them will.
No, and they deserve better
Yeah.
than not living their dreams, you know.
Yes.
And yeah, it is sad that women feel that that is what they need to do, because I think what they're really saying is, I just need rest. I need to restore. I need to replenish. So how do we create that for women?
Yes.
And not just women, by the way. I think, you know, it's not always women. I think primary caregivers, which in many cases now is, you're seeing greater number of men take on that primary role, but I do think it is still predominantly women who fit that profile.
Yes. Yeah, and you're right to point that out, because it's not always, but the science will tell us that overwhelmingly women are the primary caregivers, and and the mental load. Actually, I met Leah Ruppner at ABC Studios. We were talking earlier off air about your recent interview at ABC, and I remember I was doing an interview at the ABC, and immediately after me was a woman called Leah Ruppner, and she's actually really big in the world of the mental load. So I think you'd probably enjoy her work. I'm going to invite her onto the podcast. Dr. Kat, we've covered so many really important topics and ideas in our time together. Is there something that I haven't asked you, or something you'd like to share with our listeners? But I do want to save a little bit of time, because I'd really like for listeners to learn more about this brilliant new book you've written called Good Work. But is there a question I haven't asked you, or something else you'd like to add just kind of before we finish up this conversation for today?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for giving me space to do so. I mean, I think we've spoken a lot about topics I'm really passionate about, but we've probably focused a little bit more on the individual factors. So maybe what I will add to that is, and this probably does tie a little bit into the good work, but I think when we're talking about people working in organizations, there are lots of things that we can do as individuals to craft our roles to be more in line with our needs. You know, so I don't want anyone to be working in a job, and we shouldn't be working in jobs where we feel that it's unsustainable. So we talked in the last episode about this idea of job demands and job resources. So another practical strategy I might offer that's a bit more work related to your listeners is just this idea of getting really clear about your current role, and maybe even just writing on a piece of paper, 2 columns. In the left-hand side, writing down all of the aspects of your job that would be considered demands, you know, maybe even over the course of a week, say. So it could be, you know, like, you know, meeting deadlines, you know, meeting with clients, meeting targets, you know, spending however many hours in meetings, which I think is a huge demand. And then on the other side, you know, what are the resources in your job that you feel are present? So the positive aspects of your job that sort of give you joy or help you to cope with the demands or do the demands. So, you know, it could be training, autonomy, you know, connection with people. And even though it is a bit of a, you know, a bit of a oversimplistic way of going about it, I think sometimes what that can reveal is when a role is out of balance. And if you feel even just instinctively in your gut that things are out of balance, I would really strongly encourage people to have a conversation with their manager, because most managers, I think, are sometimes just blissfully unaware, not through ill intent, but just unaware that somebody might be feeling that the work they're doing is unsustainable. Yes. And they're often the first point of call in terms of managing workload. And just, it could just be that some of the things that are on your plate aren't actually as high priority as you might think they are. And so engaging a conversation in, and maybe even forcing them into a conversation around workload and priorities is really important. So I used to have a practice in my team when I was leading a large team, where on a Monday morning we would meet every week, and I would ask each of the team members to give me a score out of out of 10 about their workload. So 10 being obviously really, excessive workload, 1 being just no workload, which is also stressful, by the way. Like being under engaged is not good. And I would want them to be at about a 7 or an 8 because we need capacity in our week to deal with the stuff that's just going to pop up.
Yes.
And some people were under engaged, right? They didn't have enough to do. So we would make decisions as a team to kind of move work around or projects around based on workload and capacity, but also based on preferences and strengths and what would give people joy. So you can do a lot of crafting of your work environment in either combination with your leader or in combination with your team. So that's probably one thing that I would love to add, is that it's not just about what we can do for ourselves, but don't be afraid to voice those conversations and don't be afraid to say no to things. Like I do a lot of work with women, giving them the language around how to say no in a way that feels doable.
What would be one example? Could you just give us a little bit of language around that?
Absolutely. So my favorite one is, of course we want to still look like a really good citizen. So if somebody asks you to take something on and for whatever reason you don't think you have capacity, to actually say to them, maybe it's your manager, I'd really love to help with that. It sounds, really important. Really happy to invest or, devote some time to that. But here are the things that I have on my list at the moment. What would you like me to take off?
Yes, brilliant.
And in many cases, that manager would say, oh, actually, no, looking at all those things that are on your plate, this is actually not more important. Or yeah, let's just take that one off. Or you can do that one later. So it's about sequencing. Because I think very rarely do we have conversations around sequencing. We just add without ever taking away. So I think never take on additional work without taking something off. Because I don't think as humans, we're very good at estimating our own capacity. Like I know I'm not anyway, where I'm like, oh yeah, that should take me a day. It's probably like 3 days.
Yes.
I've got a bit of an optimistic bias around that.
Same. I spend a lot of time I'm in a coaching group with a whole lot of incredible women, and we're always just sort of sharing where we're at and what we're doing. And one of them shared recently that she feels like she's spending too much time on certain tasks. And I sort of jumped into the group just to say, look, I feel the same. And I think that what I've done is I've recognized within myself that, if I want to write a really thoughtful LinkedIn post that, is my words, my thoughts, my ideas, and how I'm bringing ideas together, that could take me over an hour.
Absolutely.
Now I could use AI to generate that, but I'll get AI to proof it and make sure I haven't. But AI takes away my personality and my style so much, and puts in ridiculous emojis and things. So I've toyed with that, but it does, and I just think good quality work does take time. And what you just said about being optimistic about how long things will take, I think that's so common. Yeah. And I've never heard anybody raise it, because good work takes time. And I think what does help, and what's helped me, is to sit down, and I have a weekly newsletter, for example, Dr. Kat. I have a parenting newsletter that I send weekly. Please go to my website if you're not on my mailing list, because I get so much good feedback. And I have a fortnightly newsletter that goes to educators. I'm so thoughtful about what I write, and what I've done is I've timed myself how long it takes, and now I know how long to allocate.
Oh, fascinating.
And so I know that if it might take me, say, I would have liked to have been able to do it in 30 minutes, but generally speaking, I can do a newsletter in 45 minutes. My educator newsletter is always a promise of fortnightly and under 2-minute reads. So the skill there is getting things easy and quick to follow. They're not long newsletters, but it's just the time and the thought and the care that I put into it. But I know now when I sit down, I'll go, right, I've got 45 minutes, and I'll make sure that I don't go over that. Because you know how things can blow out if you've got more time and you haven't got a sort of a hard kind of end to a task. The job will expand to take the time longer to do it.
I'm much more likely to run late when I have a slow morning.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Dr. Kat, would you come and join me for another conversation another time? Because I've still got more questions, but I really want to hear you share a little bit more about good work, which is coming out, which I know as a person that works in workspaces like schools and organisations, just the influence of the workspace on mental health and wellbeing is profound. And you've written such an incredible resource for people. I know people are going to want to know a little bit more about it and where they can get it. Could you just tell us about the book before we say goodbye, please?
Absolutely. So the book is called Good Work, Transform Your Work from the Inside Out. And it really is the idea that sits behind the book is that good work can be good for us, and that I genuinely see that work can be the solution to wellbeing and not necessarily the problem. So why I wrote this book in essence is in response to the global mental health crisis that we're finding ourselves in today. And it's written essentially for anyone who works. So that is pretty much anyone who is listening today. There will be something in this for you. And it takes, once we've made the case for why I believe that to be true, it will take you on a journey through me to we to us. So in me, individual strategies like the ones that I've been talking about on this podcast that we can apply in our own life. So whether it be mindfulness-based interventions like punctuating your day, effort recovery, things that you can do to invest in your own happiness. So that's all part of the first part, me. And then it moves more into relationships and teams. So there's lots in here for leaders, but also as colleagues and anyone who finds themselves working with other people. So topics like, how to combat loneliness and build connection, psychological safety, and other topics there. And then the final part is really where I start to think about us. So that is the system of work. So it start to think about some of the levers that we can pull to really change work for the good. So at its heart is really this idea of good work. So good work is work that is safe, fair, meaningful, and sustainable, and how we can redesign work to be more conducive to both wellbeing and performance.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. Just once again, thank you for taking the time to write it in the midst of your, incredibly full life as a mum, as a full-time employee, as a human in this world where there's so many things that are demanding time from us. It's it's so appreciated that you've taken the time not only to write it, but to share your wisdom and your insights and some of your brilliant tools with us today. Dr. Kat, I've just loved talking with you, and I just want to say a huge thank you once again for joining me on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've absolutely loved connecting and talking with you as well. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. And what I'm going to do for you, the listener, is check the show notes. So whichever app you're using, whichever app you're listening to the podcast, have a look and you can find details of Dr. Kat's work and her book in the show notes. And you can jump on Amazon to find that. Or, as I always like to say to people, check your local bookseller. And if they haven't got it, ask them to order it in, because we love a bookshop and we want to keep them supported. So thanks again so much for your time. And I will be back again with you next week. And Dr. Kat, thanks again. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jodi.
Thank you for sharing this time with me on Well, Hello Anxiety. Remember, understanding anxiety is the first step to managing it. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take things one moment at a time. Focus on what you can control and know that you are not alone on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and I'll meet you right back here next week.